I can't hear you, but I'll keep talking. So,
Yeah.
Turkey, if it doesn't expand westward, it's going to want to expand eastward or southward. They even have ambitions toward Caucasus. These are very over-ambitious people, and they have a pan-Turkic
Can you hear me?
thesis. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I have no audio. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. So I'll just keep talking. And that's it. The Turkish role in Syria, the Turkish role in northwest Iraq, the Turkish role in northeast Syria, none of us were surprised by this. None of us were surprised that Turks were supporting ISIS, that Turks were supporting Jabhat al-Nusra, that Turks were supporting this HTW, whatever it's called, HTS, Hayat al-Sham, whatever it is. Hayat Tahrik Sham, HTS. We were not surprised by any of this. When CNN and Fox and BBC and Deutsche Welle and France 24 and they're all like, oh my God, look at this. None of us were surprised. It was a question of time. The Turks want to have a buffer zone between themselves and Arabs. And in doing so, they want to suppress the Kurds. That's it. It's not rocket science. The Israelis want to have a buffer zone between them and even HTS, which is the stooge of Israel. I should be more accurate, the stooge of the Likud party and Mr. Netanyahu. So everybody wants to have a buffer. Now, what happens with the buffer? When you create a buffer between two countries, both sides want to make the buffer bigger. Because guess what? The more the buffer expands between two countries, those two countries that are in another country, in the third country, want to permanently take over the buffer areas. The Golan Heights that Israel stole from Syria in 1967 or 1973, whichever, don't quote me on that. It was supposed to be a buffer with UN observing force. For all these years, UN blue helmets were there. They left now. They left, and IDF is there in those posts on top of the hills in Golan Heights. But the thing is, like, Golan Heights is literally heights. When we used to get snow and rain, Golan Heights got a lot of snow, and that snow flowed down to Jordan River, into the Lake of Galilee, and from there it went all the way to the Dead Sea. Israel's water mostly comes from the Golan Heights. It's very strategic for Israel to have that, to keep it. So if they expand it even more, a lot of this is about water. Environment is a big, huge part of the Middle Eastern, West Asian conflict. Israel will eventually switch to salinization, which is very environmentally inefficient and is terrible. But then you got to drink water. You got to be able to survive. So I'm not sure if they're already dabbling with salinizing water to drink it, but the good quality fresh water used to come from Golan Heights, all the snow. Guess what? It doesn't snow as much anymore. So the water is dwindling. This whole idea of kibbutz, turning the desert into forest and agricultural land, that idea for the past 20 years has been declining. And that was the lifeline and the miracle that Israel really created. We have to be fair and balanced. Their agricultural technology is unbelievably amazing and advanced. So that's that. That's the Syria thing as far as environmentally speaking. But I think Iran will send its proxies into Syria. It's possible. Hezbollah has been weakened. I don't think they have any forces to spare to go fight in Syria. There will be some Hezbollah special forces, but they won't be as effective as they were when they were defending Bashar al-Assad against ISIS. So that is kind of, Hezbollah has been greatly weakened. They killed Nasrallah. Many combatant and Hezbollah militants died. And so we have to look eastward. From the east, we will have Hashd al-Sha'bi, which is Iran's biggest proxy in Iraq. In English, it's called a PMO, Popular Mobilization Forces, PMF, PMF. And so they've already been on record that we're not going to allow HTS to expand to Iraq. The regular Iraqi army quite possibly may get involved. For sure, there are IRGC special forces. I think they are on the border of Israel, Iraq, and Syria, quite possibly within Syria itself, operating covertly and illegally. IRGC, SEPA, and it's basically, I had to put it this way, it's a shit show. It's a shit show. It's going to be one big shit sandwich. Huh?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I'm just going to finish it with this one sentence and let you ask me a question. It's going to be one shit sandwich and we're all going to have to take a bite of it.
Okay. Do you see possibility of a Kurdistan from this mess?
Unfortunately, the Kurds have been manipulated for about 20, 30 years by Israelis. The Israelis have tried to manipulate the Kurdish aspiration for nationhood. They've been trying to manipulate the Kurds geopolitically, ideologically, and to some extent, Kurds have been a very suppressed people. Very suppressed people. Very sad situation with PKK and Peshvak, I think it is the Iranian Kurds. Very sad people, very brave people, very honorable people. But they are an Iranic people. They are an Aryan people. The Kurds are more Iranian than Arab or Turkish or Syrian. You can understand if you speak, if you're a Persian speaker, you can understand Kurdish. Kurdish is an Iranic language, right? So I don't think China and Russia would want a Kurdish state. I don't think even us, United States, would want a separate Kurdish state because it's going to throw off the whole geopolitics. And guess what? Where Turks are, that's a lot of oil. I'm talking a lot of oil. Both in northern Iraq, I refuse to call it Iraqi Kurdistan. It's northern Iraq, as well as northeast Syria, a lot of oil there. And Iranian Kurdistan, there's a lot of oil and petrochemical industry there. So it's going to throw off the entire balance. I don't think the Chinese are going to allow that. However, the Israelis would very much like to destabilize the entire region, and it is to their strategic advantage if they implement the concept of Greater Israel for a country called Kurdistan to exist.
Okay,
Israelis right now.
Can you come up, please, with questions? I don't know why you left the panel.
There are people that are writing comments. I much rather if you talk, so we would have an audio visual.
I invited them and they don't want to come up. They just write comments. I've been reading comments to, Russia, Turkey question, and then there was the Kurdistan question. I've been reading it to you. I don't know. I went to Nuri and.
Where's Nuri?
She's down there. I don't know why she's not coming up. رویا جان can you come up? رویا جان بیا بالا اگه سوال داری الان بکن که دیگه ما یواش یواش باید جمع کنیم.
I was hoping we would have more questions.
Good discussion. We have to have a follow-up, Alex.
For sure we do.
A couple of weeks when we see what's happening.
Oh, definitely. This situation is very fluid. It's developing. It is not difficult to forecast, however. It is not difficult for us to forecast and predict what's going to happen. This is an easy forecast for those of us who are in the business of geostrategic forecasting. It's not difficult to forecast.
Say something else. With the Syria added to this mix of free passage, there is a landline opening to Europe.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. This landline can connect the Persian Gulf or the India, whatever merchandise through land from Saudi Arabia, Syria, Israel, and up into Europe.
And that's why India, Modi, Prime Minister Modi's India. Prime Minister Modi is controversial in India. He's done a lot of good. But he's also a very nasty racist and Islamophobe. To a point where he said Muslims should be deported from India. I mean, this is dangerous talk. Modi is in bed with Netanyahu. And Netanyahu, if you remember from the last UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, which takes place every September in New York at the UN Global Headquarters, Netanyahu showed his little map up there, and he showed a line from India to Dubai to Saudi Arabia, and from there to Jordan and Israel and into the European market that I told you everybody wants to have access to. The other one is the Iran. Okay, so you mentioned the Persian Gulf. So natural gas, right? Natural gas is going to be the transitionary clean form of technology, at least cleaner than petroleum. It's not 100% clean. It's nothing compared to solar or wave energy or wind energy, but those clean technologies are not going to meet our energy needs of 9 billion people. So natural gas is it. And guess who are the top 4 producers of natural gas in the world? Us, America, Russia, Iran, and Qatar. Okay, Qatar is 3, Iran is 4. Some people estimate that Iran could be even number 1 in terms of having natural gas resources, both in the south, but in the Persian Gulf, under the Persian Gulf, as well as the Caspian Sea. We're talking a lot of natural gas, a lot of natural gas. So the idea with this whole thing with ISIS and all of this was about natural gas. 2 different lines, pipelines. Qataris wanted to, because you have to understand, under the Persian Gulf, on the southern Persian Gulf, there's a huge natural gas field that the Iranian calls the South Pars field, and the Qataris simply call the North field. Around 1/5 of it falls in the Iranian territorial waters. 4/5 of it, I'm estimating, under Qatari. That's why Qatar is number 3 in the world, at least when it comes to that natural gas field. The whole thing with ISIS, the whole thing with the Syrian civil war, so-called Syrian civil war, which there is a civil war element to that war, was over this pipeline. The Iranians wanted to bring their gas up from the South Pars field under the Persian Gulf into southwest Iran, west into Iraq, Syria, quite possibly Lebanon, and from there to the European market. And guess what happens when you do that? All those countries in between, like Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, they make money out of it too, for their territory to be allowed for the Iranian exit pipeline to go. Guess what? The Saudis and the Qataris and the Turks and the Jordanians and the Israelis said absolutely not. And Qatar was supporting ISIS. Qatar said, no, we want to export our natural gas from that field that I told you about, the South Pars field, which the Qataris simply called the North field, through Qatar, through northern Saudi Arabia. I give many TV interviews about this topic. Through Qatar, northern Saudi Arabia, up to Jordan, and guess what? Where Syria came? They wanted to go through Syria and Turkey into the European market. Syria in 2011 and prior to that said no. We want to go with the Iranian pipeline. Right. That's why they're destroying Syria. So with Jolani and these lunatic HTS savages and terrorists and Islamists, they're going to open that territory. They're going to open Syria's territory. That's why Turkey is in Syria, because the Qatari pipeline is going to go through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, which is the stooge of Israel, through the new Syria, minus Bashar al-Assad, to Turkey, and from Turkey, exit pipeline into Albania and Greece, and from there, all those networks and pipelines are interconnected. That's what this entire thing is about. It has all the Shia, Sunni, all the Iran wants to export this revolution. Oh, let's, liberate Jerusalem. All that is context. Ultimately, the foundation of this entire conflict with Syria going back to 2011, which at 2015, Russia came in and provided air coverage. IRGC special forces were in Syria prior to that. All of that was about the natural gas pipeline. Everybody wants to sell Europe. Europe, when the Russian pipeline stopped, when we, United States and God knows who else, blew up Nord Stream pipeline, so the Russian oil wasn't coming, right? Russian natural gas and oil, but mostly natural gas, wasn't going to Europe. We cut that supply line and said, we're going to allow Ukrainians and United States, we were going to give the natural gas, send the natural gas to Europe, which is not, the transportation cost is much higher than the Iranian or the Qatari pipeline. That's what this whole thing was all about. This existential crisis that right now US and and Russia are facing, the existential crisis between Ukraine and Russia and NATO that's existing it's got nothing to do with Zelensky and democracy and all NATO. NATO wants Ukraine to be part of NATO because guess what? Ukraine has tremendous amounts of natural gas and oil. They're a huge competition to China for the European market. So the whole thing is about energy. This is the energy war.
And Russia switched sides on us for the different pipeline, the Qatari pipeline, to switch sides?
This is actually a very good question. I have Russian colleagues. I have been published in Russia. I've been on Russian TV. And they're not going to like what I'm about to say. They're not going to be happy with me, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm an academic. I'm in the business of truth. Generally, Ellie, I don't trust the Russians. They switch alliances too quickly. They sacrifice their alliances with third world countries. Usually, I shouldn't say third world countries, developing nations that are dumb enough to become proxies of Russia or any other country, they will get sacrificed when these superpowers sit amongst themselves and negotiate. Iran and Ukraine may be sacrificed by President Trump and President Putin into coming to an agreement. US and Russia coming to an agreement. Iran may be sacrificed. Russia already sacrificed Syria. So generally, I'm sad to say I shouldn't say I don't trust Russians. I don't trust the Kremlin policymakers because of a lack of consistency. Now, Russia under Soviet Union was consistent. Post-Soviet Union, what's left of it, which is the biggest state is Russia, they're very practical and pragmatic minded. And they will throw their allies under the bus. Look at what they did. Look at how much they were pampering to the Persian Gulf Arab countries over those 3 Iranian islands. Iranians were shocked. Russians were openly saying, yeah, maybe these 3 islands should go to UAE, to Dubai. Iranians were shocked. They were disrespected. They were dissed. So Russian behavior post-Soviet Union is inconsistent, is too practical minded, and their priority is to have peace with the United States, believe it or not. Their priority is to supply the raw material to China, China sending it to the world, the rest of the world, to the entire world, and some of the profits coming back to Russia so that society could survive. Their population is about 180 million people, not much at all for the biggest country in the world. They have tremendous amount of raw material, oil, natural gas, precious resources, water, you name it. They love to share that with China. China is the manufacturing hub of the world, and China supplies the entire world. And of course, the profits from China will, to some extent, go, the part of it that belongs to Russia will go to Russia, which means Russia very much likes to have peace with the US because of the financial transactions that they will benefit from, not directly, but vis-a-vis China. So they will throw they will throw Iran under the bus. They already threw Syria under the bus.
So that was BRICS.
BRICS is overrated. BRICS is overrated. BRICS is just in its formulation years. You will see the effects of BRICS in 30 years. It's a good start. BRICS is the new Warsaw Pact. It's a good challenge to NATO. It is good to have a bipolar world. It's good to have a multipolar world than a unipolar world. There's more balance, right? But BRICS is overrated for now. And you have to understand, BRICS, there are only 3 nations in BRICS that share a common border. Actually 2. China and India. And they're eternal enemies. Russia doesn't share a border with India. Russia shares a border with China, but it's close enough to India. But then you got South Africa all the way here, and then you got Brazil, which is one of the founding members of the other part of the continent. Alliances work when there's common borders. Iran is part of BRICS. Okay, close enough. No common border with Russia or India or China, but in the same proximity, more or less. So don't overestimate BRICS, which is what I see happening. It's a fallacy that I see happening in media. In academia, we think BRICS for the time being is very much overrated. And you really think United States is going to sit idle and let its currency collapse because BRICS wants to come up with the alternative currency? No. That's a recipe for war, global war. If President Trump doesn't negotiate with BRICS, if President Trump doesn't negotiate successfully with Russia and China, President Trump, you have to understand, is the bully. He believes in mafia diplomacy, rightly so. We need a strong man right now in America. But when you engage in tariffs and mafia diplomacy, you're also shooting yourself in the leg. Nevertheless, if you come to some agreement where the dollar remains to be the global currency, we have saved America. But I think countries have moved on. Countries are very frustrated and aggravated and quite frankly bored with us. And they want to shift into a new reality. And that's where BRICS comes in. So from a geopolitical, geographical perspective, BRICS is too far spread. But from a financial challenge to the dollar, that is an existential to the national security of us, United States of America. And we're not going to sit idle and we're not going to put up with it. President Trump has been on record saying that the demise of dollar would, if it happens, God forbid, the demise of the US dollar will be America's worst defeat. God forbid that happens. If that happens, your money, my money, the hyperinflationary situation, it's going to be just like what's happening in Iran. You wake up one morning, or 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever money you had is worth 1/20th of its value. Let's say 1/10. Let's say you, Ellie, have $100,000. If you have a hyperinflationary situation and the dollar loses its value over time, your $100,000 is going to be worth $10,000. It's a disaster. No one should be sitting around celebrating the demise. Yes, no one should be sitting around celebrating the demise of the US dollar, especially if you're an American. You're stupid because you just lost your life savings unless you take your money and save it in the Chinese currency, which is not as secure as the US dollar. The US dollar is in its formative years of decline, but it's still the most guaranteeable, safest investment. Now, mind you, the other night, I Googled our national debt. You know how much it is? It's over $36 trillion. Over $36 trillion of dollars. Wow. So this thing is out of control. That's why when a world war happens, when it happens, not if, God forbid, when it happens, part of that is to try to manipulate the US's $36 trillion debt. It'll be a form of manipulation.
Alex, I am way over my capacity. Yes. The phone, yes. I won't be able to download this video. So we need to wrap up.
Yeah. But I say, just to wrap up, those of you who are interested in my work, please Google me. Follow me on my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, we have close to 1,200 videos of my interviews. 1,200 videos. Hopefully, they will be kind to me and they will not shut me down. But that is the hub for my work, audio-visually speaking. And secondly, I want your audience to follow me on Instagram. We are trying to expand our Instagram channel. Follow me there. And also, if you like, on Facebook. Facebook is for my global audience. Everything, of course, is in English. Instagram is geared toward my non-English speaking Iranian audience. Everything on Instagram is more or less in the Persian language. But please follow me on Instagram. Even if you're not Iranian, the translation option on Instagram is excellent. Support me emotionally. Write me a few nice words if you feel like telling me that. The other day, I got an email from somebody that I don't even know, is a follower on Facebook, Ellie, and I don't even know who this person is. She said, Alex, should I call 911? I was like, why? And she said, because I haven't heard from you. You haven't posted on your wall. Are you okay? That not only made my day, it made my week. So your words of kindness really arrives in my heart, because people such as myself and the recently deceased, my beloved colleague, Scott Bennett, people like us, we are the tip of the sword. We put a target on our back just for speaking the truth. Well, we don't put a target on our back, but by speaking the truth, they paint a target on our back. So support us emotionally and don't abandon us, because we derive motivation and a sense of purpose, of course, next to the sense of purpose that God has given us, and be there, like our posts. When I see you, Ellie, liking something I post on Facebook, it brings joy to me. Or it really brings joy to me, because I feel like, okay, somebody's reading, somebody's paying attention. It's not a popularity context. I don't, it's not for my ego, it's for my emotions. And I feel good, and I feel like, okay, I'm doing something that somebody's paying attention to. Doesn't matter if it's 10 likes or 100 likes. What matters is that if somebody like you like something I post, because I respect what you're doing. You yourself
and I share too.
I know, I noticed. You put your neck on the line, Ellie, and I respect people such as yourself, new podcasters, people who are really multilingual like you, putting your neck on the line, not just here in the US, but also in Iran. That demands respect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I thank you for saying that. Okay, we had somebody down here making comments, just came up. We let him say hello.
Hello guys, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Algerian, and I was following your interview. Professor Alexander, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. You just, I think you missed a few points, just I wanted to shed light on them. The issues going on, I'm an Algerian. And at the moment, there is a big issue going on around the Sahel region. Probably are familiar with with the term.
Yes.
And it's to do with Russia as well. At some point, Algeria, because Russia is the first #1 supplier of weapons to Algeria, and at the moment, Algeria is having a big issue with Russia in regards to the Sahel region, because Algeria is trying to make a pipe from Nigeria through Niger, through Algeria, to supply Europe with the gas. And at the moment, after the sanctions of Russia, European sanctions on Russian gas, Algeria became #1 supplier to the Europeans of the gas. So they're supplying Europeans through two pipes, and they're building other two pipes. One of them is almost nearly to finish through directly to Italy, and another one they're making it through Spain. Yeah. And Russia is not happy with that, because Algeria is trying to get another pipe, which they're already working on it, in the Sahel region, actually. And Russians sent Wagner over there, and the last week, since the decline of Syria, Russians, actually, they took their, I think their soldiers from Syria to Libya.
That's right.
And we are having another issue in Libya at the moment.
That's right.
Because they wanted to trigger war, and Turkey is always there as well. Turkey,
that's right.
Qatar, Saudi, the French, the Americans, and the Sahel region. It looks like there are so many points boiling for some sort of a global war, and they're boiling everywhere in the Middle East, in between Russia and Europe, and in Africa, and probably in China and Taiwan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. You're absolutely right. Nobody's talking about the Nigerian-Algerian pipeline. Nigeria is one of the most populous countries in the world. It's one of the most also anarchic and environmentally disastrous countries in the world, but is extremely rich in human resources and natural resources. And Algeria is right there on the southern coast of the Mediterranean. And Algeria, on the same token, is so honorable. Unfortunately, Morocco has become a lackey to Israel, whereas Algeria, they support Palestinian people. So ideologically, Algerians are aligned themselves in a good way, but there's such a dark history and such a the Algerian civil war of the 90s, the people that died and the French's role in Algeria.
The same formula, Professor, the same formula that started the war in Syria.
That's right.
It is the same that started the war in Algeria in 1990s. It was Saudi behind it.
That's right. That's right.
Wherever there is Saudis, there is this conflict of religion and faith and this what they call terrorist organizations named Islamic organizations.
Yes. People need to focus more on Algeria. Thank you for contributing. You're absolutely right. It's not talked about in the United States. In Europe, of course, everybody's talking about Algeria, especially the French and the Italians, because Libya used to be a colony of Italy. And so there's a lot of good publication in France and Italy about Algeria, but here in the United States, it's almost like nobody even not talks about it. People are so ignorant here. They don't know the difference between Algeria and Tunisia and Morocco. And Algeria and Morocco, when it comes to the Palestine issue and the crazy lunatic Islamists running around, I mean, it's amazing. The policies are very, in Morocco, the policies are very effective against the Islamists. I shouldn't say Islamist. This is not a correct term. Basically, terrorist savages, Salafis and Wahhabis and all these people that Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE support in destabilizing Algeria. And the French, God knows the evil that the French committed in Algeria for all those centuries. But Algeria is an extremely important country, very powerful, energetically, amazing human resources. The population is young, vibrant, highly educated. You got the North Algeria, and of course in the southern part of Algeria, it's very desert environment, but there's a lot of natural resources there. And it's literally Algeria is 1 foot in Africa and 1 foot in Middle East, if you want to call it that. We call that region MENA, Middle East, North Africa, MENA, and then 1 foot in Europe. And these are extremely powerful countries. And yes, you're right. Algeria is a competitor of Russia. And they send, I did receive reports, intelligence reports about Wagner in Algeria destabilizing. I don't know. I'm not a huge.
Let me tell you one thing, Professor.
Yes.
You remember what happened? The attack on Wagner. They attempted the coup d'état against Putin about 2 years ago in the beginning of the war. Well, at that time, that's actually the Wagners, Algerians at that time, about 6 months before that, the Algerian special forces attacked a group of Wagner in Mali, and they managed to recover about $6 billion in cash. And that was $6 billion were given by the Emirati. At the moment, Algeria and Emirat, they're in a very bad situation. The relationship is very bad. So at that time, the Algerians, because they had a good relationship militarily, I'm talking about militarily, they had a good relationship with Russia.
Yes.
But on a political level, we don't have a good relationship.
Yes.
We don't have no Russian investments, nothing.
Yes.
There isn't really good relationship. Even in Russia today, when you look at Russia today, how they talk about Algeria in the media, they don't really talk about us in a nice way. So they talk in a negative way. Yes. And I don't know that you can see that like Russia has got two sides. I don't know.
Absolutely.
The
Russia,
same way you said it. Yeah.
I wish it was 2 sides. Russia has 10 sides. Russia flirts with North Korea just to piss off the Chinese, but they're also an ally of China. They're also have been a historical ally of Indian armed forces. Russia talks a lot of good deal militaristically with Iran, but politically they're not with Iran. Politically, they will throw Iran under the bus just like they did Syria, and now you're telling me all this stuff about Algeria. Russians are not reliable partners. Russia, the Kremlin, if you want to understand how Russia operates, try to understand how Kremlin operates. And if you want to know how Kremlin operates, try to understand how Russian mob operates. The Russian mob works closely with Kremlin, and these are not nice guys. The Russian oligarchs are not nice guys. And this guy with the Wagner group, he was a food taster. He poured wine for Putin, and then he became an oligarch, and he became full of hubris that Putin had to take him out on that plane crash. He wasn't a nice guy. He was a butcher. I watched the documentary recently about Wagner, and they go to the most dangerous prisons in Russia and recruit these criminals and promise them if they fight, they'll be free in 6 months to a year. and these are hardcore murdering criminals. And we know what they've been doing across Africa. They have a tremendous presence in all these countries in Africa, Wagner. And they're all covered up because they're white and they don't want African people to easily identify them. But it's gone to a point where a lot of these African countries are waving the Russian flag. They are trading their chains, the chains of the British and the French, and to some extent the Italians in Italy, for the chains of the Chinese and the Russians. And I feel sorry for my African friends and colleagues. Do not trade in the shackles of one European white country for another one. Or same in the case of China. The Chinese go and buy the ports of African countries. I'm sorry, not the ports, all the property around the port. The port is the most strategic part of any country that has access to water, whether it's a river, a lake, or more than that, an ocean. And the Chinese go on and extend these high interest loans to corrupt African politicians, which they control. At some point where they cannot pay the loans back, guess what happens? They take over the ports because they already own the property all around it. The Chinese foreign policy is a carbon copy of the British 19th century foreign policy. The Chinese are not the nice guys. It just happens to be that China doesn't have a history of conquest. China has been always suppressed under the thumb of the British and to some extent the Portuguese a little bit. Now they're exerting imperialistic power. And so they're going to use the same methods. They're going to use it against
guys, I won't be
African
able
countries.
to
They're going to use it
this
against
video.
Iran. They're going to look at their behavior in Indochina, which they're interested in call in Asia Pacific. Indian people are very much. Yeah, I'll finish it up in 3 minutes, Ellie. Indian people are very much insulted when they call that region Asia Pacific. It's Indochina. Look at how their behavior toward Vietnam and especially Philippines. So I counsel our African colleagues, whether they're Algerians or whether they're Nigerians or Angola. Angola used to be a hardcore communist country, a big ally, a customer of Chinese arms. Look at the mess they're in. Angola is rich in oil, natural gas, diamond, rare earth minerals, water, everything that's worth anything. It's a disastrous country. So thank you for your contribution.
Okay.
Thank you guys, and have a good night. Take care.
3.5 hours and dangerously close to not to being able to download this video. So I have to say goodbye. But you're always welcome, and we look forward to talking to you. We can have weekly chats if you like.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
We can take
Goodbye,
Saturdays,
guys. Take care.
Wednesdays.
Take care.
And Mr. Wench, continue following our guests, Dr. Alexander Azadgan. The poster is on my page. You can copy his name and follow him on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, as he mentioned. A lot of good material.
Promote our page, Ellie. Promote our Instagram page more.
Okay.
On your social medias, try to promote our Instagram.
Okay. I'm not that active on Instagram, unlike you.
Yeah, it's the Iranians can't get enough of Instagram, so that's their
Right.
social media.
Yeah.
Okay, I enjoyed talking to you.
Okay, we talk about next weekend, hopefully.
God willing.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.